my tech stack is basically HTML, CSS, and Python, Django basically, and recently I started learning Node and React. So yeah, I think the project has a lot of React usage here. So hopefully looking forward to contribute to it.
Great. Okay. Augusta, you're also, I don't think I've heard from you before.
So go with us, Mulu है.
टीम मुलू शाम का आपका स्वागत है. Thank you. और ये बहुत important problem आप solve करने निकले हैं, क्योंकि statistics बताते हैं कि बहुत सारी young.
Okay, so I don't think we have any other newcomers, so we can start with the call today. So everyone who's on the call, I'll share the meeting minutes in the chat. Add your names to the attendees list. Cool. So the first topic, basically, I wanted to discuss this. One second. Yep. So right now, Aditya added the FAQs to the resources. But what I was thinking is right now we have FAQs displayed in too many pages. Like we also have it on the handbook, and we have a separate page for FAQs as well. So I was thinking we should probably remove it from the handbook because it's the same questions all over again. So is that a good idea? Because 3 places we are displaying the same information in different formats.
That begs a question about SEO. Like, is there, and maybe we can answer this now, maybe we can't, but is there, do we know, are there negative points associated with duplicative information, or is it just, or is all content goodness? Or
there is negative point associated with duplicate stuff.
You know, this is a good, so okay, let's dig into it a little bit more. How duplicative does it need to be before it's negative, or like at some, to a varying degree, or at some point, if you're talking about Apache v2 and you mention it on one page and you mention it on another, like that all adds up to being, that's additive for kind of the domain being authoritative or relevant to certain terms like Apache v2. Do we, this is, I know this is kind of a tough, this is probably, it's not a black and white question necessarily, but do we know to what degree, if you have a page that has 12 paragraphs, one of those paragraphs is verbatim duplicative of that same content that you would find on 2 other pages, is that, like, you see where I'm going with, like, hey, where's the line, or like what's the, and I realize, near as I understand, there's sort of general guidance given, or people generally commenting on Google's algorithms for PageRank, and the algorithm itself isn't expressly published, and so it might be a little difficult. And plus, it's like not just a single thing; it's a bunch of stuff, like, you know, accounted together. Yash, this could be one of like a homework assignment. I mean, that's why everyone's here, right? Is for more homework. But it might be, Yash, if you're of the impression that, like, hey, there aren't penalties imposed, good, or that's interesting. There's such a thing as the canonical reference that comes into play if you really do have the exact same content published on 2 different URLs, 2 different pages. If you use the canonical reference, if you say that one is the canonical reference, like one is the original, and you sort of point to it, then that helps Google understand where to, of the 3 URLs you have that are duplicative, which one to return to someone if they're looking for that term. And so it points to the canonical one. But there's more to it than just this simple dialogue. It's kind of been an open question that's plagued us for a while. Anyway, I know that isn't exactly what Deborah Priest, like, great, thanks. That wasn't really answering my question. Like, this is a component to that answer. It's like, okay, one point of evaluation is SEO. Is there a positive or negative in context of repeated text? The other evaluation criteria is UX, which is in some respects, well, it's UX and sustainability, maintainability of the code. So there's kind of two ways of answering this other part of the question, I think, which is, hey, is this duplicative publishing of this same information beneficial or convenient to people who are browsing the site? Or is it does it just kind of make their eyes roll because they're like, well, oh, there's more. They've already read them somewhere else. They come over here like, oh, there's more I should just generally read to understand. And they start to read through it. And it's like, geez, are these all the same? And like, well, I'm not sure. Like, I got to keep reading because I really want to know in case I miss something. And so then it's kind of a nuisance, kind of annoying. Like Deborah Priya is saying, there's no value add. So that's an open question. Another thing is like, oh, it's really convenient. They might have missed the other FAQs because it might just be here in the handbook. And they're like, you know what, if I just read the handbook, I'll probably have it all covered and this is good. So I'm going to focus on the handbook. The other component to this is maintainability of the FAQs themselves. If we have in the code 2 copies of the same text, oh geez, when we update the license or whatever, when we make a change to one of these or add another one, we've got to go and add it there, and then maybe over there too, because it's published 3 times. So one, if they're all sourced from the same place in the code, that would take care of sustainability. 2, I'm not sure. Like, I know that it's convenient for it makes the FAQs more likely to be read when they are published in more than one spot. And that's just true of any content. Okay, fine. Where's the balance between annoying people with seeing the same thing versus making sure that they actually see it? Okay, that's a good question. We could try to answer it with data. Like, hey, is there Google Analytics on the site? Yes. Okay, what pages are people visiting and how long do they stay there? We might be able to determine that, like, oh, of the FAQs that we have published on different pages, this is the one where they're spending time. Like, we might be able to answer that. Maybe it's probably not worth, it might not be worth the time. But. So to me, the tiebreaker might be that one about SEO. So we're going to have a dissertation on figuring out whether or not to publish FAQs in 2 places or not. Comments from others. Does anyone have data to share on penalties for duplicative content versus not? This is just one of those general SEO questions. You got to imagine that, well, Google's algorithms have been around for quite some time. People have tried to game the system, or they try to game the system all the time. There are absolutely naughty things there are things that sites can do that Google considers naughty. We want to be on the nice list, not the naughty list. Does anybody, if no one's really speaking up, I guess nobody feels really confident. Is this something that anybody wants to look into and come back on? What are the rules around duplicative content?
Okay, so now that I see this, there are some questions which are not on the main FAQ list, like, because the handbook, as much as I remember, these questions were all written down all over again. But some of them, like this one, is repetitive. So it's probably not all of them are duplicate. So we will have to do a little bit of more research.
So at max, the cost from SEO perspective would be that if a person searches for Layer5 FAQ, he might get the community handbook suggestion as the first one instead of the general FAQ link that we have. Because if from duplicacy perspective, what I know that if we have same pages at two different links, only then it hurts the SEO, because the crawler would be not be able to identify which is the ideal path for it if it serves the same data. But if there's a bit different, because this page is completely different than the FAQ page that we use in general. And as Devupya mentioned that there are some differences in the data as well. So yeah, it shouldn't be that much of an issue is what I think. Though maintainability might be an issue. I'm not sure how we are importing the data in case of handbook, but in other places we are using the same FAQ component, that's for sure.
I wonder if a link pointing to from the handbook FAQs to the main FAQs, like at the bottom where it just says, to go over and see, didn't get your question answered, see this other FAQ, or
Yeah, that sort of makes sense. But again, like what I was thinking is this is one sort of FAQ at a different URL, and we know it's different than the community handbook ones, but it might not be that clear for everyone else, because the community handbook one is again like the endpoint is the same, it's FAQs, but the difference is not very clear.
yeah, and Deborah, so your current line of thinking is sort of like, hey, it's a bit like, it'd be nice if they're just all in one place, and then we can just reference them all in one place, and then we eliminate duplicity. And since the other one is broader and more general, that other place would be a landing spot for the rest of these. Is that what you're thinking, or?
Sort of.
Like for me now, if I go on Google and search Layer5 FAQs, it prints the Layer5 FAQ first and then the community handbook link. So like from the SEO perspective, I think we are gaining on both of them. So not an issue.
Okay, that's informative. That's helpful. Yeah. So it doesn't look, yeah. So it looks like Google's treating them as independent pieces of content. And yeah, interesting. That would be, what if, well, how about this? If someone volunteers to teach us all about duplicative content with respect to SEO, that at least for that portion of the consideration, maybe that would help. Any volunteers there? Anybody want to learn this? We've done a little bit of studies, I think, between some of the people who've been here for a while, which is why some of us are familiar with like the canonical reference and how that plays into duplicative content.
I can take a look. No problem.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, and Deborah, then maybe would it be okay if we hold on reworking this area until we have that data?
Yeah.
It is okay.
There were a couple of more SEO issues, like performance issues today. So another thing is cache control headers. Like we need volunteers for that as well. Basically what this will do, as much as I am aware of, is it will cache the static assets that we have so that it's not downloading again and again every time a user visits. So this is another thing that someone can take up and look at.
Nice. Yeah. Do you want to give maybe one example just so that people can confidently volunteer?
Okay, I am not that aware of this. Nikhil, are you?
So basically, cache control is like in our case, if by default if we don't provide any specific attribute or value for it, it defaults to 1 hour or 1 day at max. It's what I do. But for static contents like images and CSS sometimes or JS files, if you consider if you're importing some script which is not gonna change for a long time, then you could assign for them as well. Like cache control, we assign it for specific files which we are gonna use or for specific pages as well using the header attribute and using the header tag. But in case of Gatsby, I'm not able to find a particular plugin or a way how we can use it, because if apart from Gatsby, if we would have used Netlify to host our site, then Gatsby provides a plugin to use Netlify to use cache control, to give a cache control value. But without Netlify independently, I haven't been able to find any such value. So if anyone could find that, it might have. Because
I
in
was
that way, if we are, so yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was looking into this a little bit, and one thing which I saw was using the HT access file or something to like.
So that comes in if we are using a Apache server, but I don't think we are using one. So that won't help us. That's the issue. So that's
Yeah.
the only cache that we have.
Yeah, to Deborah's previous point, like the .ht access file, or to Nikhil's point, that configuring the .ht access config file is helpful and will work so long as your web server is an Apache web server. And in our case, like we don't, I don't know what our server is, and we don't have control to get there. Okay, fine. So Nikhil, I would be dumbfounded if there isn't a Gatsby plugin for that configures cache control headers. Like this is a great point that you've brought up. Like, yo, yeah, geez, of course. If we haven't swapped that, like if we have the same image name and they've already got it in their local cache, why are we going to waste the time? Like, let's give them a good experience. And yeah, we're gonna have to put some money on the line maybe to like, I guess here's more homework, or another point of research is like, are there any Gatsby plugins that allow you to set your cache control headers? So this particular header, does everybody know kind of what we're referring to? It's a meta tag, right? That has some meta cache control.
For that, like until HTML4, what I have found is we could use it using the meta tag. But recently, what I like from the research, what it seems like there is other ways through which we could do, but there isn't any proper explanation around it. So, but like the thing is, if anyway we could find out like how to properly insert that value, even if we don't get a plugin, we could use it directly in our code to add it via the React element component that we use.
Yeah, very good. So by the way, so to help us all, so by the way, so Amit, it's nice to have you here as well as some others. And Amit was just saying, like, it was just kind of recounting some of the tech that we have here. And I was trying to say, if the only thing that you're familiar with, if you're on this call and the only thing you're familiar with is just HTML, good. There's a lot of stuff to do. Like, and this is one of them. Well, actually, the questions we were talking about with SEO, like that's certainly one of them. Nikhil, do you recall?
Actually, willing to take up this issue. Hi, Amit here.
Oh, nice. The one on cache control, or the?
Yeah, the one on cache control. But yeah, I was just going through Gatsby. I have, no prior experience with Gatsby whatsoever. So I think it will take some time to explore. But that's okay. I'll try it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Nikhil, is this, do you recall this page? Or like, do you recall some of these approaches?
So it basically highlights which all files and how much time we should give in the cache control attribute for each of the data types. Like in case of HTML, it shouldn't be more than a day. Like the max age should be 0 because it might change frequently. Same applies for other pages data as well. But for static files, it is the maximum, which is I think years of data, years of time, because it changes hardly. Most of the time, it's the same image. At max, new images might get added, but it's not replaces very soon. So that's the reason only images as such, which is the static file, gets the highest age for it. So it basically Gatsby provides two plugins by default, which is using Netlify and S3. But I'm not sure which host we are, like Netlify we are not using for sure, that I'm sure. And I doubt if we are using S3 as well. So we don't have a ready-made plugin as such.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So we're a little bit, right. We're a little bit at the mercy of our host. So I think of our web host, I think most of you understand that. Well, I guess all of the sites that we run here, they're hosted on GitHub pages. So even the Gatsby site that we run for layer5.io published as a static site on GitHub pages. As such, we're not afforded control over some of that infrastructure. They might be using S3. As a matter of fact, they probably are. But even then, I don't think that they would necessarily honor, or I don't think that that this would allow us to hook in to, like, especially if it took AWS credentials, like there's no way. Or if we needed to, I don't know, it's something to look at. Like if yeah.
So that gives us two things to do research on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's possible. But so Amit, I guess the thing is to have a look at the S3 plugin to see if we might be able to configure it without AWS credentials. It may or may not have an effect based on whether or not GitHub is using S3 for content distribution. The other thing then to look at is just how we can have a convention within the site itself to use to set cache control on different types of content.
Yeah, from what I understand is I think we need to, improve the time of cache, right? For this.
Yeah. And then, how we do that in a manageable way. So for example, on any given page, there's a few pictures. And for that particular page, how do we make sure that if we want to set, like Nikhil, do you know how we would target target images for the page? Like if they're published under /static, we don't. Okay, so more and more we're starting to publish a lot of the site images under a /static, right? Like under a separate directory structure, not adjacent to the content itself. And so based on path, we might be able to say, hey, anything under this path should be cached for an extended period.
So Gatsby, I mean, here according to the documentation that has been shared, so there is a max age of around some number here. So basically, what we are trying to do is increase that, right? Increase that time period.
No, not kind of.
Okay, I got it all wrong.
I mean, no. I mean, kind of. Yes, that's part of the goal. Like, where I think we're actually identifying that we're not setting the max age yet. We're not really. I don't know that we're actually setting any cache control just yet. And so, yeah, we do want to set a max age for specific types of content, the static content and specific, the graphics, the images. And it might be that this tag is being used, but I don't know that it is just yet.
So for a particular cache control, you could get it from the network tab. If you go to network tab and you go to a particular file which is in fetched, just reload the page, or you could. Okay, select all in the headers. It's only fetch / yeah. Select one of these images also. If you see in the response headers, it should have, sorry, in the request header below, in the cache control, third one, cache control max is 600.
Age 6 minutes, is that like 5 minutes? Or is it 5 times? Or is 10 minutes?
That is, I think, 10 minutes. What I think.
Here's another one. Ooh, what's this? Oh, okay, strict. So Amit, actually, so it looks like more to what you were saying, that there is a max age defined for at least using this static image as an example. And so, yeah, bumping up that time from 10 minutes to something else. Yeah, which is what you were saying. That's,
right.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think we've kind of qualified at least one thing that can be done. It's like, hey, how do we ensure that all images have a much higher cache control set? And okay. Amit, are you any other thoughts, Amit, before we move on? Does that sound manageable?
Yep. I mean, I just need to look into it. I don't have experience with Gatsby. I'll just look into it and then maybe get back in Slack.
Anybody else want to jump in here on the same topic? Collaborate?
I'm already looking into it, so we can get in touch on Slack.
Sure, I'll do. Yeah, I'll get in touch with Nikhil, then maybe we can work this.
Okay. All right. I just want to capture your commitment and make sure we get your level of, which is a total joke. I'm totally kidding. Thanks for signing up. Like, hey, I think even though you're not familiar with Gatsby, like you'll get familiar pretty quick. Like I think you'll be successful. So I'm going to be quiet now and hand the ball back to Devapriya.
So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is that in the recent site audit, it was showing that we have 49 incorrect pages. And I think the number is more than that because this tool does not actually go through all our pages because of the limit that we have. So yeah, the thing is, these are all redirect issues, and on looking into it a little bit, I think the problem is with the trailing slashes, because even, wait, where did it go? Even over here in the notices section, it shows permanent redirects, the one with trailing slashes, the one without. So I think that is the problem. So we were discussing it a little bit, and I think a solution could be to force trailing slashes to all our URLs and redirect to only that, because right now we're not doing it explicitly as much as I'm aware of. So yeah, Nikhil, do you want to talk about this? You think?
So based on a few of the data which the author shared on Slack, the thing is Gatsby by default creates pages with slashes. That's how Gatsby is. And because when we started developing a site, the intention was not to have the slashes. So we modified our Gatsby Node.js file a bit to delete the pages after getting created, just to remove the slashes from the path and then recreate it. That's the reason if you go to a page on layer5.io and give a slash to it, or if you open a page basically, then it will first load with a slash, then remove, and then again display. Because by default it's fetching a slashed page from the server, but since it's not there, and it gets to know that okay, it's the page without a slash, because that's how the config is. It's showing a page without the slash. And if you yeah, that's how. But if you directly load the page, like you could notice the same behavior when you open the networks tab and see how the data is fetched. But if you load a page directly with slash, it will only get a 200 response code. But if you load a page without a slash, it will redirect to the slash page, get a 301, and then again come back to the without slash page. So that's how it is working. So the intention is like we could avoid those pages by simply removing that piece of code that is by default creating with slashes, and yeah, that will also help us to avoid those redirect errors that we have.
So we are going ahead with adding the slashes to all of them. Right?
So the only complication which was mentioned about it was there might be some issues with the, like suppose if someone visits our site regularly, right? Our data might be, or that path might be cached to his local system, and when he again visits to that page, then he might get a 304 404 not found, because the path would not be valid anymore. But the good thing in this case is, since if we, after forcing the slashes on the page, if we still go to the page without a slash, it will redirect us to the with slash page. So I don't see any harm in that case. So if so, in case to avoid those 1400 errors, those redirect issues, and that unpleasant issue of having a slash then again going out, we could force the slash on all the pages.
Yeah. So one of the challenges there, though, is that whenever you share a link with someone, whenever you hand type it, or whenever you're typing a link, whenever you're working on the site and you link to another page, I think the overwhelming majority of the time that you'll share a link or code one up, most, like, I don't know, at least for my part, I never put the trailing slash on the end, because I assume that I don't need to, and that's, like, and like, I guess what I'm trying to, and so that means when we go to share things in social media or other places, like you'd have to ensure, or you'd really want to or need to ensure that the slash is there. There would be a redirect.
This was the initial issue, I think, Lee, that we removed the slash, because in case of redirect, we didn't get the thumbnail while sharing the link. So that's the reason we had to remove that part, so that the redirect won't happen and we don't get that issue, if I recall correctly.
And right now, if we implement this trailing slash, we also have to change all the internal links on the site. Like we have to add it to them as well. Like all the link tag, we have to add the trailing slash at the end of it.
It's a big change comparatively, because it would involve going through all the whole code base and updating all the links that we have.
Yeah, I might have gotten the decision confused? Wait, were you guys deciding to? Repeat what you were deciding to do? I guess.
We were
Yes.
deciding like which way to go with this.
Okay. Is it possible? Like, all right. So just all right. So do we know, is this counting negatively? Okay. We definitely don't want to, like for people that come to visit in their browsers, ideally they're not redirecting, because it takes an extra second or two to like hit the page, then get redirected to a different page. It's not helpful for SEO. Like it's overhead. It's not, so if we can avoid redirects, good. Are we sure there's no way to configure I thought it was just a choice in Gatsby to like publish without trailing slashes. And they don't make it that easy.
No, that isn't, unfortunately. In fact, like according to the blog which Devopia shared, it's the web practice since the beginning of the web to have trailing slash, because the thing is how Gatsby work is it creates a index.html page for a directory by default, and since it's a directory, they implement a slash for it. And if we have a direct .html page, then they don't create a slash for it. Like suppose 404, for example. Then in that case, a slash won't be created because it's a direct HTML page. That is enough.
Okay. Is one solution then making sure that an index.html page is in every directory, such that then you don't need the slash?
Even if we have the index.html page in all the directory, it would still create, because if we have how it works is, if we have suppose careers page, right, careers/index.html basically, but ultimately we are only displaying on the URL that is layer5.io/careers, because index.html is by default understood that okay, that's the page which has to be rendered. We never write index dot anything or like index on the URL itself, because web understands that okay, index is the page to look upon directly.
When you're browsing the web, for all of you that are on the call, do the sites that you're on, do they typically have a slash, a trailing slash, or do they typically not?
Most of the cases it's not. That's where like initially I conflicted with when the women shared that we should implement, but based on the blogs that the developer, I'm not sure if he's a developer at Gatsby, but he has been using Gatsby for a long time. Yeah.
And it's also just one blog. I mean, we got to take in like multiple more than.
Correct. Yeah. So that's where I searched that there was another blog which is developers.google.com. They also mentioned that we should use blogs. Like that's the way how slashes work basically. It's not a mandatory, because since React router, like reach router that we have, it doesn't care about the slashes, because many of the sites don't implement and many of the sites do. So it just ignores it, and that's the reason like nowadays, since majority of the sites are built either using React or other JS library, we don't see that slash anymore. So it's still upon us if we want to do it or not, but it's just if we like, there isn't any hard and fast rule that there would be much of an issue. There are just two areas which are causing this. One is user experience, that is they load a page, they see a slash and then it goes up, and the other one is the number of issues reported by Smush. Yeah, that's it.
The guy's getting good. It's a great. You know what's nice about the last couple of issues that we've talked about is, well, these are things that this just shows that we've worked on the site for a year, and we're into the hard stuff. Like some of this stuff, it doesn't like some of these. not necessarily easy answers, and it's not necessarily completely clear. I just intuitively, it makes a lot of sense to me that if there's a redirect, that's suboptimal compared to no redirect. Like just in general, like the page crawlers wouldn't like it. Your web server wouldn't like. It's more overhead on the server, more time taken. It's higher latency on the page. Like all that. Like yeah, if you can avoid the redirect, like don't. Why would you ever? You don't. So and then I think that would be generally accepted, like a common that is commonly agreeable amongst all of us. That like, hey, if you don't have to redirect, don't redirect, because that's just is worse. It's worse than not redirecting. Then it would be kind of an open there would be discussion and reading and maybe research about like, is it better to have a slash versus none? Like from a UX perspective, like what's the ideal thing? For my part, I would say I never typed a slash at the end, whether I'm sharing a link, typing one out, like doing it in code or what have you. And so for my part, I think that it's nice not to have them, although I could learn something and be trained the other way. And so like, I feel like we need just a little bit more data. But Etain, did you have a, yeah.
So I think most of the sites have been using, not necessarily that there should be a forward slash at the end. Like you said, sometimes people don't even remember that they're supposed to even add a forward slash. So the best thing is just stick it out.
Attain, from your perspective, most of the time, a URL will have a trailing slash?
No, they don't.
Oh, okay, good. Good, okay, good. We're in agreement, so good. We're still. By the way, I just want to be very clear, since I talk a lot on this call and the other ones, you absolutely don't have to agree with me. Don't agree with me. Really, if you don't think that that's the right way, don't. And I know Etain isn't agreeing with me just to agree with me. Etain's talking about his experience and the way that the web works. But it's also very helpful. Like we all learn when we have to, yeah, just agree with Nikhil. That's how I've almost learned my lesson there. So
No, actually, I also agree with you because it's actually what I've experienced over time.
yeah, I think I'm totally confused now.
No, like what I'm saying is my opinion is based on what I've actually seen over time.
Got you. Okay. Where do we go from here? Like, what do we?
Like it's not necessary to have the trailing slash, but if we choose on not having it, we have to figure out how to not redirect. Like on the first time you land on the page.
Sorry, I have a question. I know I came in late, so I would love to be kind of clarified on some parts. I don't know. Can I go ahead, please?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know why is there a redirect in the first place? For these links.
Yeah, Nikhil, you might want to explain the history there about. So Etain's question is, how come there are redirects? Why are there redirects?
Okay. So the thing is, Gatsby creates static data from the JS files that we have, and it crawls to the directory, and the term which the developer uses is director size or something on the data that we have or the files that we have. So based on that, it gives a slash to a path which is a directory, and it doesn't give the slash which is not a directory but directly an .html file. So in our case, what we are doing is we are deleting the slash page and recreating one without a slash. So by default, how Gatsby server works is it renders a page with a slash, and that's what it sends from the server. But since our site doesn't use a slash, it first goes to the slash, then found that okay, that's not the data. There's no data in there. It then again it comes back to the it gets a redirect to the without slash URL because it has a duplicate data on that page.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
So
Yeah, I feel we should do some more reading. Like I don't mean to hold things up or what have you, but we should be confident. If we're going to make a change, we should be confident about it.
yeah, makes sense.
So there are a couple of links which I pasted, which the OPR shared earlier about whether to use a slash or not, and what's the actual perspective from Gatsby's side, like how it works. So if anyone is interested, they can take a look around it to understand more on the topic.
And if you find something new, you can share it with us on Slack. Cool. So a lot of performance discussion today. So moving on, Nikhil, would you like to share on your? Would you like to share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hoping it's visible. So as we were talking about, like we have currently bookmark in place, but it's too subtle, like the user doesn't even realize that there is such functionality that is already in place. So I tried to make some changes, so some notifications, so the user can be notified that yes, your progress is being tracked, so you can come back without worrying about where you left. Okay, so whenever user visit any page, so there will be a little notification, which I hope it's visible. So it says like we bookmark your progress, so you don't need to worry about the mess of remembering where you left. So this will be the first notification, and in case if they misses that, so when they get started, there will be a little bookmark icon, which I hope it's visible, right? So they can get track. Okay, so they are marking. So this was the first thing I implemented. Any suggestions?
Okay, yeah, sure. I had a few points in the implementation part. First one being we are actually not bookmarking it. So replacing the term bookmark with we track your progress would be a better approach, is what I think. And second one is we don't need a bookmark icon beside the content tables that we have, TOC that we have, because it might give the user a bluff that he can actually enable and disable it. Like he can actually bookmark it manually, because since we are not giving that option, it's just a way to show that okay, that page is getting bookmarked, but it's not configurable. So giving that icon makes it a like illusion, creates an illusion that okay, you can take it manually, which page to bookmark and which to not. So that's the two things I had.
Okay, so I think we should remove this icon, and we should leave this notification there, or this one too.
Yeah, you can leave the notification, but update the text to have we track your progress. So we keep a track of your progress. You don't have a mesh of remembering. Just
Okay.
update the text like that.
Yeah.
Not sure. Lee might be better in case of grammar, so you might.
Yeah, actually, I just written whatever came into my mind. Okay. So this one was the first update, and the another update was I made two changes into the quiz. So the number one component is the timer component, which is there. So whenever the quiz starts, so there's a timer going on, and the navigation control for questions, like you can go to the next question and the previous question. And this was the second update.
This UI needs an update, but I think until we have the backend configured, we can live with it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, so
some-
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, just as in a generic way, if there are 25 questions, you might show that to the user that they're on question 2 of 25. Yeah, not it. You don't know. We don't know. You don't always tell people that when they're taking a quiz, but maybe just if you're looking for something to do until there's a design, like that's something that could be done. Another thing that could be done is just like if there are 25, that they can navigate them back, next, back, but that they might also be able to jump if they're on question 24 and they wanted to jump to question 2. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on the things that I'm saying right now. It's probably simple enough to say you're on 2 of 25. Okay, fine. And it's just info. There's no, we will probably only get in trouble if you try to do the other thing I just said about letting them navigate to any individual question. You get in trouble because there's a lot more thought that needs to be given to the test itself and just the rest of what's going on.
Okay.
But
yep.
Nikhil, outside of any structure that you've got behind here in terms of just the questions themselves and the answers, how those are being fed to the UI? Is it JSON? Just
Yep. For now, these are some dummy JSON, but I'm still working on researching about how we can implement the backend. So we have a clear instruction like, okay, these should be the JSON or data, these should be the fields. So I think I'm still working on that backend part so we can implement the front end more accurately.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, those two were updates from myself.
About the notification you give on the bookmark, shouldn't the notification come on the page like when you start learning, like on top or something like that?
Yeah, I think we can move it to that page also. But I thought like this is the same page where we show the resume button. So maybe it would be more accurate if we show the notification there. Not sure, but yep.
Okay, but the notification should come only when they do not show the resume button, right? Like that is like if we show the resume button, they know that their progress has been tracked.
No, the notification will come. It doesn't matter if they have already started or not. So like sometimes they can miss the resume button. So that's why the notification is placed, because it will attract the attention. Like, oh, okay, there's a transition going on. There's a model popping up. So they will be like, okay, so that is why the resume button is there. That is the main intention behind the notification.
Like to repeat Divya's question, is it better to have the notification bar on the top right than the bottom left?
Yeah, we can go with that.
Like,
Top right.
I'm asking for everyone's suggestion if everyone thinks the same.
Premature, probably premature to optimize to figure out. Some of the ways you can help reinforce that like, hey, this is the appropriate spot, and this is where is when you account for other use cases, like maybe on the site. Sometimes you're browsing a site and it'll say, hey, do you want to sign up for a newsletter? And that maybe that's a pop-up somewhere. Maybe it's a modal, maybe it's something on the side. Maybe you submit a form, like a contact us form, and and you get an acknowledgement back that says form submitted will be in contact, blah, blah. And maybe that shows up somewhere. Maybe on some sites you go to, they're like, oh, here's our chat box. If you want to chat with us and you have got questions, like click here. A lot of times you find that in the lower right-hand corner kind of a thing. Anyway, the point is, like, if you go through some of those use cases, which, like, would we ever have a chat on the page? Yeah, sure. Do we have one right now? No, because we don't have people staffed all the time to answer service mesh questions or to answer meshery questions necessarily. That's not the only thing that people come to the site for. But anyway, we don't have that just yet, is my point. But if you kind of consider those various things, then you have more data points to say, okay, well, this space isn't used. Here's how we would use it consistently to, thank you, Amit. Here's how we would use it consistently to convey to the user an acknowledgement or something. It's probably just premature to have the discussion. The same thing for the back end, actually, Nikhil, on the bookmarks is like, no, we have a back end ready and kind of in mind. Rather, the back end isn't. Back end is ready for enhancement. And we can introduce that and show how that would be done. So it's probably not worth spending time on that just yet. Some of that I didn't say before because you're prototyping anyway, trying to figure some stuff out, getting a feel for what might work. And that's great. And it's kind of like with those notifications, like, well, that might work. And maybe we should get some design down before we start refining. Don't slow down on the prototyping just before we refine. Because I think what part of Nikhil was going to say before about like with the bookmarks, like, hey, if the bookmarks show a small little bookmark icon next to the, what do you call it, next to the page in the table of contents, like, well, it's so silly how much time you can spend discussing just that one thing. On one hand, it's really helpful. On the other hand, it could be confusing, and it just depends on what functionality is there. And it's like, well, what functionality is going to be there? And it's like, well, we haven't gotten to that yet. Maybe we should do a design, and then we can, and so, like, keep running ahead, because part of what happens when you do run ahead is like, oh, like that's absolutely what we should do. Like, of course, like that's like, we might not have thought of that otherwise. Anyway, as you I would say don't invest a ton of time on refining some of the specifics, because they're bound to change as we go right down stuff like, do we let people have more than one bookmark? Do we auto bookmark based on what, on a cookie, or like based on, okay, no, they have to sign in for it. Like, we need to just, like, these rules of how it works, we have to kind of write that stuff to get that hardened. And then you can make other decisions based on, but in the meantime, it's like, oh, where would an indicator be? Oh, it could be here, and that's what it looked like, and here's what that is. And maybe it's a perfect match. And maybe some of that, not maybe, but some of that really influences what we might want to do on the back end as well. Because sometimes if it's not possible to show a bookmark somewhere, it's like, well, let's not bother with that back end functionality because it's not going to be possible anyway. So, okay. So yeah, all of that to say, all that feedback to say, hey, we shouldn't give feedback yet. So we should go write down some designs. That's actually what I was doing, was just creating a design spec, an empty doc. So we can start lay this out a little bit better. So good. So good progress.
Okay, so Shubhradeep, do you have any updates on the calendar page you're working on?
Yes. Actually, hello.
Yeah, you want to share your screen?
Yeah. Okay. Is it visible now?
It's not.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
Hello. Okay. Actually, in the calendar place, there is no like noding animation. In few days ago, I was just browsing this calendar and I saw actually my network was so slow. I saw this thing that there is a no loading animation. It's just showing the loading only. So I guess it's not a good UI. So I thought that there should be a loading animation. So I implemented this animation actually. This is the animation, and but the thing is, uh, if I go to my code and show, this is the loading animation, but I was getting an error while just building this site. So let me show my error. Okay, 1 minute. Can you tell me that how can I resolve this error? Actually, when I am trying to apply this image in the loading, instead of loading text, this thing is showing up when I was building the site for testing. I don't know
Are
how
you trying to
to.
use the static image component?
Uh, I didn't get it.
Okay, that's fine.
So this is the
Okay,
image, and
we can take it offline and discuss it on Slack. Like if
yeah,
that's
okay.
fine, better.
Actually, this image I was trying to load using this image stack, but when I was using this thing, I'm getting this error. This is the error. I saw the actually here is use the React loader. I saw this documentation, but I am unable to find anything for this error. Previously, there is like there only is this text, but when I use this image, I'm getting this error.
I don't see an error now. So maybe you could try sharing. You could share your changes, like your diff file, as well as the error that you
Okay,
are getting on the Slack, so that it's easier to
okay,
debug.
okay. Okay, can I share in the Slack chat the thread I
Yeah,
share
you can
the
share it
two
as a
suggestions?
separate question.
Okay, 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 sure. Okay, thanks.
Unless if anyone else has anything to point out, I don't have any issues.
You were also working on changing like the if you scroll down on this page, on the calendar page,
This
the
one?
website.
Okay, website. Okay.
You,
This one.
yeah, like on highlighting
Okay.
that.
Yes, yes. I suggested this idea, and Nikhil said me they will work on it, and then they will give the suggestion what to do it. Actually, I'm suggesting that on the basis of the days we can highlight the meeting. Right now, it's only highlighting these community meetings. So they said that it will they will give a suggestion for this thing.
Okay,
So
so
what
So I
I
haven't even implemented. Okay.
there seems to be some misunderstanding. Like you could implement the by default highlighting of the next upcoming meeting. What needs
Okay.
to be
Okay. Sure.
discussed was the loading animation. So that once you have the implementation, then we could decide that okay, we should go ahead with that animation or change.
Okay. Okay. Actually, I go through the this React loader npm package, but I unable to find why this. Sometimes I'm getting this error, but I unable to find anything there. Why I'm getting this error? That's the main problem.
Yeah, maybe like try deleting the cache folder totally, and again try running make site if that sometimes solves the problem. Like
Okay. Okay.
you
I'll
might
try.
have a cache folder in the file explorer, right? You just delete everything and then run make site. Uh, Sometimes it
Okay.
solves the problem, but yeah, maybe just give it a try.
Right now I'm using this thing, but I guess
Yeah, no,
I'm
right,
not getting
like
error.
no, like later on.
I once okay. And one thing I want to ask that if I'm able to do this thing, where can I put this image? Right now I'm just putting here this loading PNG, but this is not loading. This
Put-
loading in PNG, I'm just putting this here. So where can I put this thing, this icon?
There'll be an assets folder.
Okay.
Yeah, on top after source.
Source, yes.
Inside images you can put there.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I think Shubham is not on the call. Aditya, did you have any updates today, or should we discuss it in the next call?
Yeah, like all the steps that I mentioned. Can you open the PR ones? Yeah, the steps that I mentioned here are like all are complete. Now only the last final steps, which Ashish said that we have to remove some unnecessary linker test. That's only left. Otherwise, all the implementation is all done. Like, can you scroll down and like for the latest deploy, we can see the implementation. No, not last.
This one, right?
Yeah, last one. Yeah. Like
Where is
project
Jeffrey's?
/ compatibility, or maybe I'll share.
Yeah, you can share.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the landing page. Here we see all the edge results as well as the latest edge results as well as the latest results. And other changes that I have done is in the past results page. As stated earlier, I have implemented a filter which allows the users to see edge test or the stable test. So last time the landing page was an empty state where user had to select whether he wants to see an edge test or a stable test. But right now the initial state is like both the checkboxes are selected and users can see all the past results, whether it be edge or a stable. So yeah, user can deselect and see the tests that are selected. And another thing that I implemented was Aditya suggested that like there should be at least one checkbox that is selected. So if we deselect stable test, then the checkbox automatically selects edge test and we are shown with the edge test results. And yeah, and the breadcrumb issue is also now is solved. Yeah, this is how I wanted. Yeah, that's it. That's the update. If anything more, any more changes that are required.
Aditya, can you check mark stable tests again?
Yeah.
Nice. And so do you or were you working towards showing only the latest edge or latest stable?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the landing page is that. Yeah. This is the only latest edge and latest stable.
Wow.
And yeah, I updated the date format of the timestamp also. Now we are seeing the only latest thing only, existing timestamp.
Nice.
The timestamp format was different from the earlier stage. Now I've updated so that the sorting happens correctly. So due to this, the file changes is around 99 file change, but that's only because I've changed the date in the PR.
Yeah, the only other, I think
So like
you're
any
done.
more
Right? The only
that
other
need to be done.
is the only other feedback is maybe to like edge tests and stable tests. It's just the use of the, if you were to use the word channel or release channel, because that's what those are. And the tests actually aren't any different between edge and stable. So yeah, if you, in the checkbox, maybe if you would, instead of saying edge tests, stable tests, you just say edge release or edge channel, stable channel, or edge release, stable release.
Sorry, like your
Yeah,
voice got stuck.
I'll text it to you. Cool. Okay, actually, I didn't realize we're like 15 after. Did anyone have anything else?
I think we've covered everything on the minutes today. So these three we have to keep looking at. So not only all the volunteers, if anyone else is interested, you can look into these issues. And yeah, I think that's all for today. Thank you guys for joining. See you next week again. Bye bye.
Thank you, Deborah. Bye all. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.